Hi, welcome back. Aaron and Stacy here with Superior Singing Method, and we're in the middle of our series here. I think this is episode 6 around there, and this is the psychology of being of a singer. The idea of what does it take to be a singer, the psychology behind that. And this one in particular is how to eliminate fear, or how to eliminate fear as a singer. Okay, so one thing I want to repeat to kind of kick us off here that I talked about in an earlier video is that all fear comes from picturing the future. Okay, I want to start with that premise and go from there. All fear comes from picturing the future. Now, fear almost never exists in the present. Okay, unless you're being chased by a bear or a lion. Generally, fear does not exist in the present moment. Like if you're watching this right now, unless you're thinking about something you're scared of that's coming up or that's happening, there's an anxiety around a certain thing, fear doesn't actually exist in this moment. There's no reason to be fearful in this moment. Okay, so I just want to throw that out there to understand that when you're in fear, understand that you're picturing the future and you can change that. You have a choice to think about what you want to think about in that moment. And when we get locked into the present moment, it often eliminates fear. That's just one thing. I've got several things that I want to talk about of how to eliminate fear as a singer. So, if all fear comes from picturing the future, one thing that exacerbates that fear, one thing that just cranks the level of that fear up is procrastination. So when we get in this cycle, it's this stuck cycle of, okay, I'm afraid that this is going to happen, or I'm afraid I'm not going to be good enough, or I'm afraid I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't know how to do this, or she's going to reject me, or whatever it is. Here I'm afraid of, and so I'm not doing anything about it, and that procrastination and that putting it off is taking up a bunch of bandwidth in my mind of like, it's just weighing on my mind. I say it like this, like this when it comes relationally, the unhad conversation is the one that's having you, that's running you rather. The unhad conversation is the one that's running you. So that when there's a fear of something that'll happen in a relationship and we avoid that conversation, it just cranks up that fear more and more the more we put it off and the more we procrastinate. But that's what we tend to do, is procrastinate, and so we're just cranking up the fear and the anxiety in our life. Okay, so if whatever that conversation is, if you're thinking of a conversation right now, when I say that, you're like, oh yeah, I need to talk to my mom or wife or girlfriend or boyfriend about that. I would say just write down on a paper that I'm going to call them by this time today or tomorrow, whenever it is, and just get that off your mind and free up your mind to be able to focus on singing. Okay, so what else? The number one fear, we talked a little about this, number one fear is the fear of failure, but not so much failure, just the looking dumb, looking like a failure in front of somebody else. And what we said before is that failure is not a problem that you'll face, that failure actually is the way you get there. And I want to take that a step further here and say, Winston Churchill actually has a quote that he says that I think is brilliant, and I found this to be true in my own life. Of all the things I've been successful in, that this is true. He says that success is stumbling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. I'm going to say that again. Success is stumbling from failure to failure with no loss of enthusiasm. And I've noticed that to be true, that when I'm persistent and tenacious and I just allow myself to fail and fail and fail and stumble and fail and just keep being enthusiastic and driving forward, success emerges out of that. So it's for me to be afraid of failure, in essence, is guaranteeing that I'll never be successful, because success comes from failure. It literally is the way that you get there. In fact, and this has been my experience and a lot of coaches that I listen to and have had in my life, that the higher rate that we speed up the failure in our life, the more successful we will become quickly. Does that make sense? So what we try to do oftentimes, we get afraid, so we slow down the rate of failure in our life. And what we don't realize that we're doing is we're keeping success at a really far distance. But if we'll speed up the rate of failure in our life, and I'll give you an example of this in a minute. If we speed up the rate of failure in our life, we actually bring success to ourselves much, much faster. Sounds counterintuitive, but here's where it works out. I lived in South America for 9 months, and 6 months of that time I was in Brazil. And when I was in Brazil, I was determined to learn the language. I wanted to learn how to speak. In Brazil, they speak Portuguese. I was determined to learn the language. And so I would study for about 2, 3, 4 hours a day in this book and do these sentences and all that stuff. And then I'd just go out, and I had made a bunch of friends, and I would just have conversations with people. And I looked stupid. I sounded stupid. I failed. People laughed in my face over and over and over and over because I sounded ridiculous, because I didn't know the language. But every day, and when I went out there, and the more I put myself at risk to fail over and over and over, the more I failed, the quicker I learned the language. And so fast forward about, I'd say about 3 months, and I was really obsessed with like the accent too. I didn't just want to learn the language. I really wanted to sound like a Brazilian. I wanted my accent to be really, really clean. And so fast forward 3 months later, and I walked into a room, and there was a room full of maybe like 10 or 12 people. I was part of this mission organization. We were like, building churches and helping kids, whatever. And I walked in there, and I asked in Portuguese. I said to somebody, "Hey, does anybody know what time it is?" But I said it in Portuguese. And somebody told me what time it was, and looked behind. It was a friend of mine. His name was Paulo, and he said, "Oh my gosh, I thought you were Brazilian." And to me, that was the biggest and highest compliment. And this isn't about, oh yeah, I'm so great. It's not about that. It's just the idea that the more I'm willing to fail, the quicker I get to success. And I know I'm beating this like a dead horse. I want you to get this. I want you to rewire the concept in your mind that risk and failure literally equal success. And we're so afraid of it, but the fear of it kind of keeps it at bay for us. So yeah. One last thing. Yeah, I was gonna wrap up, but I don't want to forget to say this, because I really like this. The way we eliminate fear, and it's kind of stuff that I've been talking about in this video, if you have a very specific fear, whatever that fear is, just think right now of one fear that you have. The way to eliminate that fear, let's say I have a fear of singing or speaking in public. I have a fear of singing in front of people. You want to eliminate that fear, sing in front of people. I know it sounds crazy. It's like, well, I'm afraid of that. Okay, I heard you. I know you're afraid of that. Just do it anyway. And so what happens is when the action actually eliminates the fear, and the more, if we take that action enough time, it eradicates the fear. So the way we get out of fear, whatever it is just to do the thing. Just do the thing. Just pretend you're a robot with no emotions, and you don't care what people think about you, and just do the thing. Okay, there's a quote, and my point there was that when you do it, you eliminate the fear for that moment. When you do it over and over and over and over and over again, you completely get rid of that fear. One quote that I love is a quote that says, and I can't remember who said this, but you can probably Google it, and it was, "Show me a man who's afraid to look dumb, and I'll show you a man or woman that I could beat every time. Show me somebody who's afraid to look dumb, and I'll show you somebody I could beat every single time." Because lose face, lose face, lose face. When we're trying to save face, and we're trying to look cool, and we don't want to look dumb and all that stuff, that's fine, but that's not where success lives. Lose face, lose face. Just go out there and just be like, I'm going to choose that I'm not going to care. I'm going to fail my way into success as a singer, as whatever. Okay, so that's it for this video. I want to say believe in your bigness. There's more in you than you realize. And for my #1 vocal exercise, the one I use every day and love and really helps, and a lot of other good techniques and content, click this link here, or you can click the link below. If you haven't subscribed yet, do so, and because there's a whole series of these videos coming out. And leave me a comment, because I'm writing a book about a lot of this content, the psychology of being a singer, and I'd love to just hear from you. Whatever you think is good or is not so good, and tell me why. And I'd love your feedback, because I want to write this book for you, to serve you and to serve people around the world, in order to really learn how to be a singer and not just do the vocal exercises. That's great, and the techniques, that's all great, but to be a singer and really get out there and let your life really transform. Okay, well, have a good rest of the day. We'll see you next episode.